Hi, I'm Ted Dinsmore, president of Spichtig Technologies. Today, we're continuing our series on technology and healthcare. We're going to be exploring one of the applications today with Dr. Craig Andrews and Dr. Alexandra Spichtig, who are the creators of VeyeZER. We'll be focusing on their work in reading assessments with a head-mounted eye tracking device to the visual therapy and education market. Welcome, doctors. Thank you for your time today. Craig and Alex, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why your goals for your work with VeyeZER, and why is there a need for a head-mounted reading assessment?
Well, we wanted to work off the previous generation, the VeyeZER, which has been around for 20 years and used infrared eye recording of the eye movements. It was natural to go to AR and VR to try to not only be able to monitor more accurately the eye movements, but also be able to control the distance from the reading material and be able to do some creative work in the future as far as trying to encourage better reading habits. So the first generation we're doing with the HoloLens will allow us to obtain a more accurate reading than we had before.
So I've had a passion in education for a long time. I started out as a classroom teacher in Switzerland before I came to the United States, where I continued my education as well as pursued a career in educational software development. And at that job, I was also introduced to eye movement recording and really the important role visual skills play in learning, and particularly in reading development. And so over the years, we've conducted a lot of research across multiple literacy domains and involved eye movement research a lot of the times. And so there, I've really seen how students who are struggling in reading, they also struggle with the physical process of reading, how their eyes physically navigate lines of text. And so the challenge with that is, so if they're struggling with the physical process of reading, we can give them, many more rounds of phonics instruction and another round of this and that intervention. But if it's fundamental, if there's something going on with the visual skills, then we're missing the boat. And so more recently, I've been invited to lead the Stanford Taylor Foundation, and where I get to really focus on my passion of bringing visibility to this area. And so with the VeyeZER, we really are, like Craig said, we're taking an old eye movement recording system to the next level because of the various reasons that Craig mentioned. From an educational perspective, I believe a device like the VeyeZER is so important because we get to visualize what is happening under the hood. So what I have seen in decades that I've now worked with kids is if they're struggling in reading, ultimately they're gonna think that they're not intelligent. And that's actually happening relatively quickly. So if they can't read by grade 5, we have lost them. And now not only do we have an academic issue on our hands, now we also have an emotional issue on our hands. And that issue is actually much harder to overcome than the academic issue. So this is why I feel really, really passionate about the importance of a device like the VeyeZER.
That's awesome introduction. Can you explain the current process for reading assessments for the visual therapy market, Craig, first, and then for the reading therapist, Alex?
Yeah, again, as an optometrist, we found the VeyeZER was very useful to determine the status of a person's reading ability as far as the fundamentals, the eye movements themselves. And as Alex mentioned, we need to know what are the basics of the person's reading ability. Do they have troubles with regressions? Do they have trouble with able to focus or fixate exactly where they want to read and move their fixations along? These are fundamental skills that can be trained, but we need to know which students have those problems, which students don't. And that's what the VeyeZER is attempts to do, that is determine which basic skills the child is struggling with. As far as vision therapy, the vision therapist needs to be able to see objectively where the student is now, then do some vision therapy to improve their motor skills, and then have an objective measurement to see how well the child has improved. This can be used for showing the parents as well as showing insurance companies who might have to pay the bill. Alex?
So from an educational perspective, so if we're looking at assessments in education, what's currently happening, so a real challenge with that is how something is defined is how we are assessing something. So if we define reading as, the student needs phonemic awareness skills, phonics skills, vocabulary, fluency, comprehension, and if that is all that, if that's part of the definition, then we will only assess that. So I'll give you an example. So let's say we have reading fluency. So the definition of reading fluency includes pronunciation and elocution. Well, if that is the case, well, of course, we're assessing reading fluency in an oral environment, even though the majority of what a student reads is silent. So this is the same with our assessments. So if we don't include visual skill proficiency as part of the skills, the qualifying skills, then we won't assess it. And that's really what's happening in the education space. So one could argue, well, yes, we are measuring the expression of those skills, but without eye movement recording, we're not going to be able to measure or assess the quality of those skills.
And
so that's a real
how is what you're doing making a difference for students and patients based on what they're currently doing now and what you're doing with VeyeZER?
Currently, there is nothing on the market that is available for following the visual skills of children.
Okay.
So we are bringing it back to the market, and we're doing it in a better, more technical sense than the previous models were.
And I want to follow on that because we've heard about eye tracking on PCs, but this is a head-mounted eye tracking with augmented reality. Why is that different versus on a PC?
Well, it's different for several reasons. One, of course, is you are controlling the distance between the student and what they're reading, and that can make a huge difference. The computer ones lack some accuracy as far as the cause of not being able to control the distance. Many of the measurements show errors.
Yeah, and I like to add to this because from an educational perspective,
Please.
Like assessments, we don't need another assessment that is just, for example, spitting out a score, right? So the beauty of an assessment like the VeyeZER graph is that we can see what is actually going on while a student is doing something. So the reason why it's so important to have a head-mounted system at this point is because the technology isn't far enough advanced to really give us the precision that we do need for reading diagnostics. It's not enough. To me, this is way too important of a tool or a need for a tool that just a cool thing of just being able to record with a webcam is just not good enough. We need the precision. We need to know it's not just important what word somebody is looking at. We also want to know what letter within the word somebody is looking at, because we need to identify how many fixations is somebody making within a word, as opposed to just looking at the word. Because if we're only looking at the word, and let's say you spend 2 seconds on a word, it could be because you make a couple of very long fixations, or you make many small fixations. Well, these are two different issues. And so in order to really understand what the challenges are for a student, we need to have that precision. And that's why at this point, really a head-mounted unit, I think, is giving us much more precision. And then also for the reasons Craig mentioned, because we may not only want to record from a screen. We may also, and that's with the AR capability, obviously, is really nice too, but there are just more opportunities to use this device in a flexible way if the unit is head mounted. And we also know kids rarely sit still. So if we have to identify eye movements in and around all these head movements, it gets very challenging to be really, really accurate.
That makes a lot of sense. So where do you see this application going in the future as this augmented reality, virtual reality technology is evolving? Where do you see this use for reading assessments and for visual therapy going in the future?
I see in the future some guided reading abilities that we will be developing with the VeyeZER. I think we can find the problems that the child has and then develop skill training to improve upon those specific tasks that are difficult for that specific child.
I like to see the VeyeZER in every teacher's toolbox. And to me, it's such an important tool, again, because it provides a window into a process that is currently completely overlooked. And it's so easy. If a student has a speech problem, we can hear it. If somebody has a limp, we can see it. If somebody has a lazy eye, we can see that. But if somebody is struggling with binocular coordination during the dynamic process of reading, for example, we can't see this, nor does the student potentially even realize that that is not normal. So that's why, to me, this is a device that really should be, I would like to see in every teacher's toolbox. It can be useful for baseline measures. It can be useful for formative instruction. Not only can we see whether or not somebody is responding to an intervention, but also how well, or also whether or not what we're teaching or how we're teaching is effective. For my dissertation project, for example, I studied the effects of text presentation formats on students' reading efficiency and comprehension development. And I used eye movement recording for this, because I wanted to see not just if it affects comprehension, but I also wanted to see, are they actually becoming more efficient readers as they are navigating lines of print? Because that's an important piece as well. Reading needs to be comfortable. If it's not comfortable, kids don't want to do it. If it's slow, kids don't believe they are successful readers, even though they might score really high on comprehension. But if they're slow, they will still not consider themselves effective, successful readers.
Well, that's an impressive argument, Alex and Craig. Thank you both so much. It's great to see using mixed reality technology to help parents, students, and teachers and doctors understand how a student reads. And you're really understanding more than eye movements. You're understanding what the brain is doing here. And it's really impressive work. And thank you both so much for doing this session with me today. Really want to see it go forward and be every teacher's toolbox. I love that statement. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.